Namaskaram. Welcome to discussion on science fiction in Telugu. Me, that is Kasturi Muralikrishna, along with Dr. Chittarvu Madhu and Saleem are participating in this meeting discussing about science fiction. First of all, there is a lot of confusion regarding what science fiction is, even in the international science fiction writers. So we will not get into a discussion about science fiction, and we will just say that science fiction is something, a fictional story created on the basis of scientific facts. And the writer is at ease. Writer has, the sky is the limit, where he can create any number of things with so many various infinite possibilities in science fiction. So as writers in Telugu, a regional language, we face many difficulties in reaching out to international audience. Today, we who have been writing science fiction as with dedication, with determination, in spite of so much of being not recognized or not being talked about, and indifference from readers as well as critics, we have been continuing writing science fiction. So we shall be discussing all these aspects today.
I will introduce myself as Dr. Madhu Chittarvu. I am a doctor by profession, and many people ask me why I have written mostly science fiction novels. My first science fiction or medical fiction thriller was written in 1989 and 1990. The name of the novel was ICCU. The main inspiration for this novel was I was finding that many novels, thrillers were popular at that time. That was a time when there was no television, no 24 hours television, no cell phones, no other entertainment. People were reading periodicals, and serials were very, very popular. And serials, novels with themes occurred and based on superstitions like exorcism, ghosts, and such things were hugely popular and being promoted by the periodicals as well as the writers, sometimes pejoratively called as Kshudra Sahitya. At that time I thought, why can't I create a medical thriller, a medical science fiction, which is thriller, and it may become popular for our Telugu audience. And I was definitely inspired by the English novels of the medical thrillers of various authors. So the first novel which I have written was ICCU, Intensive Coronary Care Unit, which is a medical thriller novel based in a cardiac unit where a new doctor, young aspiring doctor, enters and finds periodical sudden unexpected cardiac arrest in some patients, and he investigates the matter and finds that another doctor is doing some mischief by planting electrical instrument called pacemakers, which are not only controlling the heart but also controlling the brains of these patients. Somehow this story unfolds, and finally the young doctor can catch the evil doctor. The evil doctor escapes, and the whole matter is hushed up by the administration. This is not as easy as I explained. The whole story is explained in layers by layers as a suspenseful thriller. At that time, I had a problem of getting it published by many editors, but finally it was published in Andhra Prabha Weekly and became hugely popular. It was described as an explosion of cardiac medical knowledge in Telugu literature. Later, I have continued it as a sequel by Polonia, where the same villain doctor appears again with the same heroes, and he again, due to his inherent criminal nature, he encounters extraterrestrial people from the other planets, a planet called New Titan in Pleiades galaxy. They come to the Sahara Desert in Algeria to repair their spaceship, and they were bitten by scorpions. While treating them, he finds them, they are vulnerable for morphine, and their powers are increasing, and they are becoming junkies who can be manipulated by him. So this story by Polonia about these extraterrestrial being manipulated by evil doctor, and it has several themes like travel by light and extraterrestrials, spaceships, and good doctors, idealistic doctors, and catching this evil doctor in his nefarious activities. This was about by Polonia. It was also translated. The first novel ICCU and by Polonia were also translated in Kannada language, and they were serialized in Kannada periodicals also. The third novel was Epidemic, which is talking about a pandemic situation in Hyderabad much before the present pandemic which we have encountered recently. And the same evil doctor, now he is organizing a laboratory, and it is only a front for his evil activities. He is making virus particles as aerosols and selling these bad viruses to bioterrorists and politicians for their evil activities. But by mistake, the viruses escaped, and there is an epidemic in Hyderabad, and the whole theory is explained, the story is explained in a thriller type of format. Like that, my first trilogy in medical science fiction was ICCU, Bible, and Epidemic. Later, I followed them up by another trilogy called Space Opera Trilogy or War for Mars. I have written these novels in English language also. They were published by Sampark Publications of Calcutta. The first novel is called War for Mars, the story of the fourth millennium. The second novel is Blue and Green, Return to Earth. And the third novel is Dark Outpost, Final Revenge. In these three novels, they belong to a subset of science fiction called space opera, and the setting of the story is in the future, that is in the fourth millennium, that is 3465 AD. The earth is changed, the solar system is developing with so many colonies, and there is interplanetary travel much developed, and there are space platforms, and there are robots, and so much change in the international or interplanetary climate. So I have taken this futuristic atmosphere and have created a space opera trilogy, War for Mars trilogy, and the same thing I have translated and published in Telugu with the names of Kujudi Kosam, that is the first novel, and Neeli Akupacha in Telugu, that is the second novel, and Bhumi Nunchi Pluto Daka, that is the third novel. So to this esteemed audience who are writing science fiction, I need not tell about the definitions of science fiction, but let us see whether what we have written is science fiction or not. There are many definitions of science fiction. Science fiction means a fiction and science. Fiction based on science, the present day facts of science. So you take the present day facts of the science and develop a story what can possibly happen in the future. So science fiction also is divided into many subsets, like hardcore science fiction, where there are hard facts which are difficult to understand, that is the exact facts which are existing now. Softcore science fiction, where the facts are a little bit simple and it is easy to understand. And science fantasy, where the exact thing is not science, but it may happen like that, like time travel, flying in the air, so many other things which are not happening really by science, like even time machine or time travel, they have not been developed, but there is a fantasy about these things, like laser, people killing by laser rays and from their eyes, and people traveling by time machines, people traveling back in time and forth in time, and all these things. So many people prefer to call them as a speculative fiction also. The present term is called speculative fiction. And other things like military science fiction, where robotic armies are there and robots will fight, and cyberpunk, where example is a Matrix, where there are machines are ruling the world, and science fiction horror, there can be horror in science fiction also. Like that, space opera, where, as I explained before, the story of a romantic story between two empires, which contains a lot of descriptions about the futuristic warfare between the evil empires and the human empires, which try to occupy the solar system and the whole earth. So I have created the space opera science fiction in Telugu for the first time, and recently I published another anthology of Jed science fiction, which contains the present day topics in the science fiction. I decided to write about each topic of the science fiction, which is earth-based science fiction, like zombies, robots, and driverless cars, artificial intelligence, and some medical topics. This was the last book I have written, and I plan to write many more like these short stories in future.
Thank you, Dr. Madhu. And now we have Mr. Saleem. Saleem is a Sahitya Academy Award winner for the novel, and he is a prolific writer of both stories, novels, and now he has turned towards the science fiction writing. So Saleem Garu, now please elaborate and tell us how you got attracted to science fiction, and what are the themes that you have created in science fiction.
Namaskar to all of you. I am in literature for the past 4 decades. So far I have written 27 novels and more than 300 stories. Most of the themes are the societal problems faced by downtrodden people, women, especially Muslim women. With regard to science fiction, I am a latecomer. Only for the past 5 to 6 years, I started writing stories and novels in science fiction. I think Telugu readers, they are not much interested in science fiction. Telugu readers, they want to connect to the story emotionally. They want to identify themselves with the characters of the novel or story. For this purpose, they are more attracted, or they read more the romantic stories, or thrillers, crime thrillers. In my opinion, I think to understand or appreciate a science fiction story, one must have basic scientific knowledge, especially knowledge about physics and astronomy. Especially if you want to understand themes like parallel universe, you must definitely have a scientific knowledge, which is lacking in most of the readers in Telugu. As far as my journey in science literature, sci-fi literature is concerned, I was inspired by the stories written by an eminent Telugu writer, Sri K. Sadasivarav Garu, and the novels and stories by most prolific and eminent writer, Dr. Chittarvu Madhu Garu, who is here, and I started writing. So I must thank them for their the inspiration they have given to me. In the Telugu states, even the magazines are not prepared to publish sci-fi stories. Some years back, I wrote a story about a scientist who found a way to copy the memories stored in the brain of a person and then paste it into the another person's brain. This story I have sent to so many magazines, popular magazines in Telugu, but nobody came forward to publish it. Even in such unpleasant and discouraging circumstances, so many writers in Telugu have contributed a lot to sci-fi literature. But unfortunately, they did not get the recognition they desired. I wrote 4 sci-fi novels and 2 medical sci-fi novels and 6 stories so far. Most of my novels, 3 of my sci-fi novels are for the children who are aged 10 years and above. And 3 of these novels have won Tana Award consecutively for 3 times. As I am writing for the children, I have taken easy topics like aliens, robots, androids, humanoids, such topics I have taken so that the children can easily understand them. In one of the novel, I have written that waging war against Martians and occupying their planet Mars is not the victory at all. The victory is when they win the hearts of the Martians and they stay there in that planet along with them peacefully. That is the final victory. In that novel, I have depicted Martians as peace lovers. They don't have even weapons to kill one another. They don't like wars at all. In that novel, two boys, one from Mars and another from Earth, they become friends and they try to convince the humans that peace is more desirable than the wars and destruction. In another novel, the aliens set up the Earth and they throw a challenge to human beings that if their spaceship is destroyed within 10 days, they will spare the Earth and they will go to other planets to invade. Their spaceship is protected by a layer, invisible layer, through which no material object will penetrate through it. So all the bombs, missiles, poisonous gases, nothing will be useful to destroy that spaceship. two boys, they observe that plants are able to cross the barrier and reach the spaceship. The ant's exoskeleton is made up of a chemical called chitin. So on this basis, our people, our military people will prepare missiles coated with chitin, and they could destroy the spaceship. In the fourth novel, sci-fi novel, I have written that there is a link between plants and human beings. So one scientist tries to prove that proves that link. So he tries to inject human chromosomes into plant cells and plant chromosomes into human cells. His idea is to create chlorophyll in the human body so that there will not be any problem for food, there will not be any food shortage, and by taking the sun rays, they can create the energy by themselves. And his another endeavor is to make the plants speak so that they can tell their feelings to the human beings. This is a fantasy novel. I don't think this will ever become true. As far as my stories are concerned, most of the stories are about androids falling in love with human beings, humans occupying the other planets, aliens coming in the guise of human beings to destroy the human race. Such stories I have written, and along with those stories, I have written about the shortage of water shortage in future. So with the shortage of water sources, there will be wars between the countries. One scientist tries to one scientist injects certain one scientist creates changes in chromosomes of a plant so that the plant itself makes water by mixing oxygen and hydrogen, and such water utilized by it, and whatever extra is there, it will be kept in sacks. Kept in sacks. So only thing is we have to plug that sack and drink the water. MNCs enter into the arena and they want to monopolize the water sources, and they bribe the scientists and they take that scientific formula, right? They take the scientific formula and they monopolize the water sources. After that, how the country suffered due to that is the story. I have written two medical sci-fi novels. One is about HIV and AIDS, which had won me Central Sahitya Academy Award. This had been translated in English with the title Silent Storms. Another novel is about the latest COVID-19, which had been translated into English with the title Devastation Within. As far as I am concerned, when compared to the other writers, like eminent writers like Madhu garu and Sadasura garu, have written very and Kasturi Muralikrishna garu have written very few stories and novels. But in future, I am very much interested in writing more novels. Actually, the novels written by me three of them were novelettes. They are not novels because I have written for children. So in future, I want to write novels, full novels, and trilogy. Only Chittarvu Madhu garu himself has written trilogy in science fiction. I too want to, because I am his disciple, I too want to write trilogy in future if time permits. Thank you.
Okay. Now we will ask Mr. Kasturi Muralikrishna garu, a prolific writer in all genres, especially science fiction. Sir, what is your tryst with science fiction? What are the stories you have written, and what are the novels you have written, and what are the topics?
Namaskaram, I am Kasturi Muralikrishna. My introduction to science fiction was at a very early stage through Indian Puranas. So actually there is a discussion that Puranas can be called myths and they are all created, they are not facts. But what I found is at an early stage, when I believed in Puranas to be true, I found they stimulate the imagination and they gave me such a wide view that when I saw Cosmos by Carl Sagan and read his book, it gave me an insight into how science works, how human mind works, and how this creative imagination works to create works that will inspire future generations. So Puranas along with Cosmos, and then I'm introduced to Carl Sagan, Isaac Asimov, and Brian W. Aldiss, and all these astounding series science fiction, which when I was reading all those things, they were taking me to the edges of the universe and then trying to peep beyond the edges of the universe. That stimulated my imagination. And when I found Telugu literature lacking in creating such hugely imaginative, educative, and inspiring science fiction stories, I felt why I should not write science fiction. And I wanted to be original as always. So I did not want to be inspired or copy either Isaac Asimov or Carl Sagan. We might take some material from them, but we have to create our own original science fiction to stimulate imagination of our Telugu readers. So the first science fiction novel, I started with a novel. It is easy to write science fiction novel than a short story, because in a short story, in such a span of short time, you have to explain scientific things to Telugu readers who are not well conversant with scientific researches or facts, and then build up a story. So I started with a novel called Marma Yogam. The basis for the novel was the Indian yoga system, where it is called Ashtanga Yoga. And as you go through each and every step of the yoga, you gain certain powers. So using those powers, a person has to use discretion in utilizing those powers and go to the further step. So once he crosses all these 8 steps, he becomes a perfect yogi. And for the definition of perfect yogi, I took inspiration from Aurobindo's writings, where he says that a divine power comes down to earth from above, and humans have to create or prepare their bodies to receive that energy, just as a bulb of 120 volts cannot receive 240 volts of electricity and it fades. So the human body also has to receive that divine power to prepare itself, and this yoga helps it in preparing it. So I created a story called Marma Yogam, in which there is somebody who believes in God, somebody who doesn't believe in God. It is a conflict between these two, and there is a person, a mad scientist, who creates a perfect yoga machine, wherein instead of going through the rigorous practice of Ashtanga Yoga, if he enters into that yoga machine, he crosses through all the 8 stages, and when he comes out, he is supposed to be a perfect yogi. And there is as usual, a villainous sadhu who wants to capture this perfect yoga machine and use it for his nefarious deeds. And the conflict between belief and non-belief, and the misuse of the yoga system, and the malified intentions of humans. So it's a big conflict. It was a very successful novel, Marma Yogam. Then when I wrote it, I followed the typical system of creating suspense. It was a hugely successful. Then that gave me a taste of science fiction. I followed it up with a few stories. I based all my stories either on Indian philosophy or on the latest scientific researches. So for example, in Indian philosophy, there is a concept called we are all like, when you read the philosophical system, you feel as if we are all programmed robots. Like when I feel hungry, my stomach tells me when I'm hungry. When I see a food which is tasty, my mouth waters. Who asked them to produce? That means they are all programmed. Like when we eat something, digestive juices come on their own, acids are produced, and then the waste material is ejected. So we are like a system, a computer programmed system, where our responses to certain things are also programmed. Then I created a story based on nano robots, like a person creates, like in our body, there are white blood corpuscles which fight against any foreign body that is entering our body and keeps it healthy. So my scientist creates nano robots which are like white blood corpuscles, and they enter the body and fight against all foreign bodies, and they are self-sustaining, like they derive their energy from the body, and this way slowly over a period of time they replace the white blood corpuscles, and the body is run by these nano robo white blood corpuscles created by scientists. Now the question arises, who is this fellow? Because his body is run by all these nano robots. Is he a man or is he a robo? That is one question. And another Indian philosophy, we know that we are Atma, who take this body, and then once this body's purpose is over, we discard it and enter into another body, and whereby the Atma is there, but our memories are lost. So I created a story called Ki, in that a person is programmed, for all his desires are all controlled, and once his system is very soft, he starts getting human emotions. Then he'll be taken to the lab, all his memories are wiped out, and his memories are entered into a separate body. So this system of Atma taking one shape to another after death, I have created this story. The same way, most of my stories are based on Indian philosophy, and they are original. Like though and I took human nature. There is a story called Ventalgis Barudu, where in a Ventalgis is a very nearby system, galactic system, where there is a separate civilization, and they find a small child ejected from Earth when all Earth humans are got destroyed. To preserve, it is a human tendency to preserve themselves. So when this child enters the Ventalgis civilization, they do not want to this because humans are evil by nature. They destroy everything. So they don't want this child to enter. But the moment they see his innocent smile, they allow him. But they don't know that behind the innocent smile, the malefied intention and evil lurks in human beings. So this way, I have created all this kind of psychological and science fiction. And there is another science fiction which I wrote called Adhiratra. There is a planet outside in the solar system where there is no crime committed, but a crime is committed there. And to investigate it, they take a detective from Earth to that Adhiratra Graham. And in Adhiratra Graham, he finds that actually it is the animals that run this Graham. There are no humans in that. Animals project themselves as humans to this fellow. And in fact, they brought him for other purpose, to procreate. So all these things are written. But where I failed was, I tried to use Puranic names like Kundodara, all those things, which are very new to our readers, and they could not identify with the characters. So this is one lesson I learned is for Telugu readers.
Sir, in this context, I would like you to talk a little bit about the relationship between myth and science fiction. Can you talk a little bit about Indian mythology and science fiction? Did you find any similarities?
I found that the moment you call it fiction, it becomes not a fact. But our Puranas are facts. So people have seen them, they have written about them. Because of our ignorant state, we call them myths, we call them created or anything. But I find a lot of science in them, because ultimately there is a proverb that a scientist with great difficulty climbs atop a mountain and he finds a philosopher there already discovering the truth. So that is how Puranas and science are, and there is a misconception that science and our religious or Puranas, they are at war with each other. No, they complement each other, especially in Indian philosophy. You find science and these philosophical tenets complementing each other. Just like I told you, Bhagavad Gita says that Atma is permanent. It changes from one shape, discards one used cloth, like a used cloth, discards the body and goes into it. I wrote a story based on that. And there is in our Kathopanishad is there, where he talks about death. But the moment he understands what death is, and to tell people, he needs a physical form. So you have to become a part of that bigger consciousness. You have to lose this physical entity. But the moment you lose physical entity, you lose contact with the physical world.
Apart from this, I find that many of our mythological characters, take Hanuman, he jumps like Superman on the ocean. Take Ravana, he has got 10 heads. And there are certain things like parallel universes. The present day Earth-based science fiction talks about parallel universes, 11 types of dimensions. We are already having Patala, Atalara. So somehow such things are, we cannot prove them. Mythology is mythology, science is science, but somewhere they are meeting. Many things, in the same way, this artificial insemination or something like in Mahabharata, where Dronacharya is born from a pot where they put the semen and something, children are born, embryos. So some concepts are there which cannot be proved, they are in the Puranas, but they are also now coming into popularity. So there is some relation between myth and science fiction.
The thought that Puranas have to be proved itself is wrong. Puranas are proved facts given to us in a story form. So science is now proving them to be facts.
We are also having Divya Drishti,
yes.
Dora Drishti, Dora Sravana, so many things, Akasavani, talking voices talking from this guy. So maybe somewhere the link is broken and myth has remained as myth and science is again developed.
So the problem is, you spoke about Akashavani. We are receiving so many radiation. That is Akashavani.
Yes.
Only thing is we are ignorant now. Through science, we are trying to discover our Puranas. That is where I write my stories or novels or whatever it is. For example, my Punasrushtiku Puritinapulu, I wrote a story and a novel. based on the same thing, parallel universes. One goes through wormhole, goes into another universe. He searches there and comes back to Earth. When Earth is destroyed, the moment they step on the Earth is waiting for them because they are all bacteria and everything. So Earth turns these humans into trees, and again a new creation is born. And then I wrote another story whereby they create a kind of greenhouse in Saturn.
Yes.
And in Saturn, Titan, the upagraham of Saturn.
Yeah,
and in that, because they have created all the trees, the bacteria come, and again the different kind of creation takes place with all the geological systems happening, and man is evolved. So these kind of stories through science fiction, I think we can prepare the future generation to face their times. And for example, I wrote a story about interactive games, which when I wrote it,
Correct.
interactive game did not enter into Indian society.
Correct.
And the ill effects of interactive games, the evils that they produce and the crime that they produce in children. So that is becoming a fact. I think this is the way we have to create science fiction, where we have to observe society, put it into future, giving the perspective of what future is going to be, so that the readers or the generations will be prepared to face future
Yes.
with a positive frame of mind, not a negative frame of mind. So this is the science
So
fiction.
what I feel is, when we create science fiction, many people, many critics, literary critics tell, what is the use of these things? We don't know anything about science fiction. What are the social relevance? What are the benefits of science fiction? This is it. We have just now come out of a pandemic, 2 to 3 years. We have lived by a tremendous pandemic where almost lakhs of people died. Even the developed countries have to shut down. Slowly, we are coming out of that only by the basis of science and by inventing vaccines. But in between, there were so many human tragedies, like people dying, superstitions, somebody selling some plant juice as a drug, all these things. So by reading science fiction, dystopian fiction, we get the courage to face any unexpected situations in future which are created by our own environment or our own faults or by other unexpected things like extraterrestrial manifestation. So this is the basic and very important social benefit of science fiction. That is what I think. Can you tell, sir, any problems you faced while writing science fiction in Telugu or regional languages?
Now, first of all, the problem I faced is whenever I thought about a theme to write science fiction, if you go into the net and search, there will be a story about it. So I thought whatever I am going to write, it may be treated as a copy of that theme. So actually in foreign countries, in English literature, there are so many stories, hundreds, thousands of stories and novels about science fiction, and all the genres, all the things they have touched. So I think whatever we write, we have to take that scientific fiction or fantasy or fact, whatever it might be, and we have to write in accordance with our region, our people and how they are living and how it is attributable to them, how it is how it involves their life and how it affects the life of
What
our
I
region.
experienced is, while writing medical fiction in the first novel ICCU, readers complained. Many of the terms we don't know. So, myocardial infarction, that is heart attack. Pacemaker, what is the name I have to give? So, cardiac arrhythmia, so many things, medical terms had to be explained in Telugu. This was a problem. We have to develop our own colloquial terminology in the regional languages, or maybe one common terminology for, like in Hindi, a common terminology for all the science fiction, like robots. I had a doubt, robot or robo, whether T is silent, robo we have to say, or robot we have. Both were correct. So there were so many things, interstellar travel, whatever, travel between galaxies. So many terminologies which, when we have to explain to the regional language people, there are problems, and everybody, as we evolve, we have to find a way to solve this problem.
Actually, in writing science fiction in Telugu, we have to fight against three different aspects.
Yes, sir.
One is, as you said, the language that you have to see, because readers are unfamiliar with scientific terms and terminology and concepts. We have to explain them in our stories. Second we face is the editors and sub-editors are ignorant of what science fiction is.
Yes.
So when you write science fiction, they cannot identify the scientific concepts in it, and they cannot even understand the story. For example, recently I wrote a story where a man like we have to wear spacesuit when we go into another planet. Instead, he creates a mechanism whereby human being's body changes according to the situation in the planet. That means he not wear a spacesuit, but he himself changes. So in that, I sent a human along with his cat, and I showed that cat becomes more intelligent than human because it can adapt to so many. We need so many things to see, extra things, while cats, they can perceive things.
Yes.
So I said cat is more adaptable to another planet's environment than a human being. Human becomes inferior there. It is not like the concept at all. It is not, so this is, again, you have to fight against this. Third is indifferent or ignorance of Telugu critics. Actually, critics are like a bridge between writer and the reader, and they have to build a bridge where they themselves know how to build a bridge. They themselves don't consider science fiction as an art, as a form of story writing.
Yes.
Then how are you going to reach the people? Like, you have to write the story, publish it, explain the story to critics, explain the story to readers, explain the story to editors. So this becomes a huge gigantic task where you spend most of your time in fighting these people to make them understand what science fiction is, what you have written. So these are the three. The third one is a major thing, and the fourth one, unsaid one, is that when you write in a regional colloquial language, you don't reach out to other parts of India. Like if you write in English or Hindi, you have a huge audience.
Yes.
You are noticed. Even when foreigners come and do research in India, they talk about English, Hindi, Bengali and Marathi science fiction. Marathi, because Jayant V. Narlikar has written.
Correct.
Is a famous astrophysicist.
Also Satyajit Ray.
Satyajit Ray, Bengali, Satyajit Ray.
Yes, yes.
Because his IT, which is said to be copied
Yes,
by Steven Spielberg.
Yes.
So these four languages are focused upon.
Yes.
When you write in Telugu, unless you translate them or reach out to other parts, you will not be known. So these four aspects, as science fiction writers in Telugu, we are fighting against.
Yeah.
And still we are writing science fiction. That is kudos to our determination and our courage to try to keep science fiction on a national path.
Yes.
Sir, earlier I used to find it difficult to get the sci-fi story printed in printed magazines. But of late, there are web magazines like Sanchika web magazine, which is edited by our kasturi muralikrishna garu. That magazine is encouraging very much the science fiction literature. My 3 or 4 stories were published in it, and even Dr. Chittarvu Madhu stories were published in that magazine. So one problem, I think the fourth or third problem expressed by kasturi muralikrishna garu is solved. I think other web magazines also must take cue from it and encourage science-fi literature.
But there, the problem of editors, subeditors not knowing what science fiction is comes there. Because I myself am a science fiction writer, I can identify easily what science fiction is.
That's right.
Having said all of that, let us start the final topic, the future of science fiction in India. Still, we have got a lot of things to do, especially in Telugu. And when you see Western literature, there are thousands of science fiction books, and there are dozens of science fiction movies which are becoming popular and also earning a lot of money. There is immense scope for science fiction themes, and we hope by this conference, all of us can find ways and means of developing science fiction in India in various languages and bringing them all on a good platform, common platform, so that India, not only in India but in Asia, the science fiction genre of the literature will be improved in manifold.
Talking of Western science fiction in other parts of the world,
Yes.
they have built up science fiction as a huge mansion,
Yes.
step by step. They have astounding story series. Every year they give awards to get best science fiction
Yes.
writer.
Yes.
They print best science fiction stories, best science fiction novels, best debut science fiction stories. So that way science fiction has developed into a huge mansion where it is developing scientific temper in readers in the society also, and science fiction writers are also prospering.
Yeah.
That kind of scientific temperament or atmosphere.
I agree, sir. Even the great literary organizations of India like Sahitya Academy, Kendra Sahitya Academy or regional Sahitya Academies are giving only a second place to science fiction. I think there must be awards in science fiction like Hugo Award or Nebula Award in the international forum. And in India also, somebody like Mr. Narahari or the International Science Fiction Studies or Indian Society for Science Fiction Studies, they should come up with awards like Nebula or Hugo Awards for the Indian science fiction writers, so that the science fiction writers will get encouragement and the literature as a genre of sci-fi and fantasy will improve in our country.
I also propose that because we are international conference on the same platform, we have to translate our stories into other languages.
Yes,
Each
sir.
other stories.
A
Like,
huge project must
there are very beautiful science fiction written in Assam, beautiful science fiction in Orissa, Oriya, and there are also good science fiction in Kannada, excellent science fiction in Kannada. So all these things have to be, as science fiction writers, we may have to sit together, talk about each other, and recreate our stories into different languages so that we can reach out to each other. And I am confident, I am sure, at least in Telugu, we are creating science fiction on par with any international sci-fi writer or story. So when we come together as Indian science fiction writers, I think we can place Indian science fiction story on par with any of the international science fiction literature and stand with our head held high.
True, sir. I agree completely with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much
Thank
for giving us the opportunity.
And
Namaste.
also for participating in this discussion. Thank you, Saleem Garu, Chittarvu Madhu Garu. Hope we will have more such platforms to discuss science fiction in future. Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.